The public
You know what?
are not a marker of good taste. I tell you. Entries
Because they
like
voted for
Norway,
Loreen? Because they voted for
2015,
Amelie de Forest?
Estonia,
Because they voted for Conchita
2015 will
Wurst?
suffer.
But you need subtitles under your picture right now that basically says, I believe the people are stupid. I believe
No.
Now, y'all, there is a major controversy brewing in the land of Eurovision because Italy's Il Volo won the televote, but Måns Zelmerlöw took home the title. Yes, this is the first year in history that televoters have not voted for the winner. Now, just a brief history for you. In 2009, the Eurovision Song Contest introduced professional juries to account for 50% of the score, and they normally agree with the televoters, as in 2012 with Loreen, 2013 with Amelie de Forest, and 2014 with Conchita, but not so this year. We're ready to start a riot. And as we do, we're going to go around and talk to our panelists, who include Porig, our Irish bureau chief. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, recovering from Vienna.
It's been days, darling, days.
Yeah, feels like years.
Joining us in Amsterdam is someone you may remember from years past. Yes, he has been on. He has been on sabbatical. Vabubu Nadella is back. Hello, Vabubu.
Hello.
I'm loving your hair, darling. Are those dreadlocks?
I was inspired by Debin Adaremi from wiwibloggs.com.
That's a great segue to
Yeah, exactly.
our third panelist. He is Mr. Debin Adaremi in London.
Hey,
Long time no see, girl.
long time, only days.
What? Now, Porg, let's start with you. Should the jury system be reformed?
Yeah, I think it should be reformed. I don't think it should be axed. I think the juries are very important, even if it's just more from the point of view of it encourages countries to send higher caliber acts. But I think it should maybe revert back to the pre-2013 system. Because at the moment, the way it is each juror ranks their song 1 to 27 or 1 to 26, and then that means they can drag down the public televote or whatever, whereas in the past it was just their top 10.
Vabubu.
So honestly, I think if we think back why the jury was put in place, it's because people were afraid that Eastern European countries were going to continue to win, namely Russia, etc., that there was going to be a bias towards this whole block voting concept, etc., etc. What we've seen since the jury has come in place is, ironically, more than anything else, I think everyone can see that Scandinavia is the region that is actually the one that is getting the most block voting, even when you factor in jury and televote. If you look, also the jury in theory is supposed to bring more of an academic nature to the whole contest to ensure that quality songs are the ones that are voted through and not necessarily just songs that are kind of one hit or one listen wonders, because we know that in Eurovision most people voting are only watching it for 3 minutes, or only watching that song for that 3 minutes. So whatever can stand out the most in those 3 minutes is the one that will catch their attention, not necessarily the songs that are the most, that are kind of the deepest songs or things like that. I think if you look though at the results from this year, you can see, first of all, Italy won the televoting and won it by quite a margin, actually, 80 points.
80 points!
80 points. Then Sweden, which we can get to in a whole other discussion of why that song is all bunk. But that won the jury voting by 104 points. Now, if you really look at that song from an academic, quote-unquote, perspective, which is what the jury is supposed to bring to the mix, and the block voting perspective, which it's supposed to block, bottom line, it falls short. I mean, Italy ranked 6th in the end with less than half as many jury points as Sweden. And you have other acts like Estonia, for example, which was 5th in the televoting. This is quite a deep song, has a really strong message, great staging, etc. And with the jury, 11th with 53 points, which is 1/7 the amount of what Sweden got. So for me, I think what this shows is, if you take a step back, the whole reason for the jury was all about trying to ensure that block voting would not dominate. We don't see that block voting has been dominating in the last years. We haven't been going to Russia every year or to some other Balkan nation every year. In fact, we're now going to Scandinavia for the 3rd time. And then also, if we look at the quote-unquote depth or artistic nature that the jury is supposed to reflect, I don't see, looking at the jury results other than Latvia, any examples of actually a country scoring better with the jury than with the televoting that is supposedly a deep song. So basically, I think this whole system is bunk. I think we should give the power back to the people. This is not some slave system where we're supposed to get 3/5 of a vote like in the US back in the day. I want my whole damn vote. So I think it needs to go.
He rests his
needs
case.
to go.
Debonair Remy.
I don't think abolishing the jury is a clever idea. What I do think that the jury I think there just needs to be a reform. 5 people accounting for 50% of the overall score is completely shambolic, and I'm actually surprised that that went through in the initial phase of it. Secondly, the jury is meant to be made up of music experts and people in the entertainment industry. Yes, perhaps for some countries like Sweden and Ireland. But if you look at some other countries that are coming, like Armenia and Belarus, it is shocking. Actually, you could be even more random than the likes of you and I making up the jury. That is unacceptable. I think the jury members should have kudos. And I think that there should be a collective. For goodness sake, 6 people are allowed on a Eurovision stage. Why have less than that to account for half the score of performance? You know, so that is not clever. I think that to encourage a wider participation, we should be looking at up to 25 persons or even more to kind of form a jury collective. I'm going to slightly disagree with Vibubu on, going back to Scandinavia. Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that fact. We have gone back to Scandinavia, but in all due respect, these are countries that do submit quality entries, and these are countries that do put democratic systems in place. Melody Grand Prix and Melody Festival in that region is a very strong effort. And even when you get very good entries like Iceland this year, it doesn't really come through, because it's not because it's Iceland and it's in Scandinavia, it's just because it's a weaker song and there are better songs than Iceland in the competition. So, power to the people is a dangerous idea. I think people sometimes don't have... I think music is subjective, and I think it's important to have entries that are a marker of sophistication as well as marketability, commercial value, and all the rest of it. And you do need music experts, I think, having a say in that.
I'm gonna chime in. Now, first, on Bubu's point about the Scandinavian bias, I am totally behind him. I think because you put your name next to your vote, there's kind of kudos in saying, ooh, I went with Scandinavia and they're very in and produce this amazing music. Ergo, it's always a safe decision. So if you're ranking songs 1 to 27, as Porig mentioned, and you're like, do I put Norway 15 or Norway 25? You're gonna put Norway 15 because it's Scandinavian and it feels safer. My second point is even Scandinavian juries are sometimes not that professional. I mean, if you look at Sweden in 2013, I just went on Wikipedia, and they included Eric Rapp, who was the junior Eurovision contestant, and a backing vocalist named Monica. Now tell me this, what does Monica have that we do not? The fact that she gets the same power as tens of millions of voters, that is not democratic, that is not transparent, that does not reflect the values of the European Broadcasting Union. So I think, yes, we need to up the number of people on the juries. Vabubu.
Yeah, the one point just to add about the whole, what we were talking about Scandinavia, etc. I think, Devin, you raise a great point about the Melody Festival and Melody Grand Prix being really great
pre-selection
in terms of bringing together and making sure that a quote-unquote quality act comes through. What I would counter, though, on that, what I think the problem of having that system, if you think about Sweden with Melody Festivalen, everyone who is into Eurovision, every fanatic, and every most likely jury member follows the national selection processes. Because Sweden is smart, and they now have this process which is 6 weeks long, plus 4 semifinals, Andra chansen, and the final. And then they have an international jury which plays such a role in their own pre-selection. What that does is it basically primes that nation for whatever entry actually qualifies through. It's already been vetted with international jury, who, by the way, may end up being the same people on the actual Eurovision jury. And more importantly, the whole press center world and all of this stuff, if you look at the bookies and all of these kind of things, the moment the Swedish entry comes out, it doesn't even matter what entry it is. With Robin Kranberg, it was the same thing. Sweden is always ranked at the top of the bookies at the beginning, and it's because of all the hype created around Melody Festivalen. So I think the whole problem with this system of jury is that if you think about televoters, when they're watching, they're all watching on the same level playing field. They watch the TV, they see which song catches their eye and which song they remember the most. And I think there's something, it's the same as when you go for a job interview. You need to be the one that's remembered, and you need to be the one that's picked. And that's almost in a way what happens with televoters. With the jury, the reality is they're so easily tainted by all sorts of things like PR, the way that certain countries run their processes, who is behind certain processes in countries, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think for me, that aspect, I agree with you that Scandinavian songs are never horrible for the most part because people care in the country and because the process is great. But I think precisely because the process there is so much more refined than in other countries, I think the jury is automatically biased towards those countries. And honestly, I don't think anyone can really stand up and say that Sweden, from an artistic perspective, was the best song there. Of course, there were tricks behind it, etc. But to really think, like, when you look at the Marcel Besançon awards, that it won that is a shambles. That is a freaking shambles. I am sorry, guys.
Your soapbox is about to collapse. You have been talking for a long time. Now, I'm going to change the direction just a little bit. Porig mentioned that the juries, increase the quality of the songs, which is probably true. But I want to say this. Eurovision stopped being a song contest ages ago. This is a TV spectacle of which the song is an element. And my problem with the jury system is that it kind of kills the fun and kills the human element. How many Verka Serduchkas have we seen since the jury system? We saw the Bieranovsky Babushki, and that was it. And you know what? They still lost. They lost the televote. They lost the jury vote because a good song cuts through and wins. And so I say get rid of the jury, or at least reduce the jury's influence so you have more fun acts. Like, come on. I was so bored. Oh, sorry, Pori, go ahead.
Just a question.
Yeah, no, I think I think the 50-50 is good because they used up to and including 2012, because that brought in the Berna Babushka, or however you pronounce them, and there was other mad acts. But since 2013, it's become the juries, even though it's still 50-50 technically, the juries have become more powerful since they can drag down an act, something which the public can't do. The public can only vote for their favourite, whereas the jury can go, like what happened in the UK last year. The public voted Poland number 1, whereas all the jurors ranked it last or near last. And that dragged it down. Whereas if it had been just top 10, if the juries had just put their top 10, the UK would have given the points.
And
Devin, you look like you're at church.
Ebenezer Baptist Church. Now,
you're like, amen, girl, amen.
I just want to throw in a further point to what Porig said. Look at Poland this year. I know a lot of people didn't like the Polish song. Porig will say it's like Barbie's boudoir exploded, which it was. But the fact is she came 15th with televoters and dead last with the jury. And I'm sorry. A moving story of a woman in a wheelchair singing about herself with images of her walking, that does not deserve to be last or like 23rd or wherever the jury put her. The human element in the contest is lost when you give the quote-unquote professionals too much power.
And look at Albania.
Well, quote-unquote professionals should be professionals. This is my point. Bubu mentioned earlier on about Sweden and the whole Melody Festivalen process. Well, all I'm saying is, A, they don't have monopoly on that process, and B, why punish them for a good process? I think that process should be applied to other pre-selections. There's a lot of scandal with Eurovision. I mean, internal selection, that's a completely different debate, which I'm sure we'll cover at some point. But, I don't think that we should punish processes because somebody's decided to do it in a clever way. Moving on from that, my issue with the juries date a number of years. 2015, Iderne. How could you not pitch that in the top 5? I mean, what are you judging on? If you're judging on staging, composition, vocal delivery. I mean, she was the only one on stage holding that range and those number of notes. And somehow the jury, a panel of music experts, actually put her 20-something.
Jose Fuentes. She was wearing Jose Fuentes.
25,000 euros. I mean, it was probably out of jealousy she was marked down. 2014, Main Fine Gold. How could a panel of music experts not rank that any further? Then you have great discrepancies in 2013. Husi with Ingaku. That did fabulously with the televote. Killed by the juries, and of course it didn't advance. Chrysalis, Valentina Monetta, how did that not qualify? You could keep going on. Philippa Sousa the year before, Norway, Stella Mwangi, Dana International with Ding Dong, even going back to Christina with Horehoni in 2010. How did these songs escape the jury vote?
And you know what? This works in the opposite direction. For instance, 2011, Italy Returns wins the jury 251 points to second place Azerbaijan 182. I'm sorry, that was not legit. That was the EBU saying, let's get Italy back in the contest, let's get them in it to win it, and let's pump up their score. The jury is corruptible.
I agree. I don't even think they're necessarily corruptible. But they are. I mean, jury votes were cancelled. Montenegro and, I mean, let's not even
But
go.
when there's such a small pool, like the 5 people, it's much easier to pay off 5 people than if it was 10 people or 15 people.
Yeah, and
even if it's not about paying them off, the fact of the matter is 5 people. I mean, honestly, even just within the wiwibloggs team, you pick 5 people at random, you pick another 5 people at random, you pick another 5 people at random, and each of those groups of 5 people randomly picked. You ask, which would be, if you ranked all of your 27 songs in the final, how would they rank? And then you give the point system just like we have, and then you look at the results of those 3 randomly assigned groups from within our own team. You will find
And you've got the highest and the lowest score, which is usually a 10 and a 0.
We'll find pretty damn different results because it's a bunk-ass system. And someone who's stupid came up with this shit.
Thank you for that eloquent response. And they don't even vet these people properly. The rules explicitly state you cannot know anyone or you can't be related to people such that it will affect your voting.
2015.
Thank you. The Australian juror admitted on national television after the fact that he was really good friends with the backing singer and songwriter of Russia's song. And guess what? 4 of the 5 Australians rank it first. Now, I don't think these people are sitting in isolation. I suspect they communicate. Oh, you're voting for Russia? Ooh, I'm gonna vote for Russia too. Ooh, because my points are Russia.
Yeah, you're right. It ain't the Miss Universe. Those little booths that they put them in with the wind blowing so they can't hear the questions being answered. They're not sitting in that whole damn thing during the thing. And the other thing, by the way, which is really complicated about the whole jury thing, if it's so simple because there's only 5 voting from each country, why the hell does the jury vote on the night before and the televote not vote on the same damn competition? Because if you think about it, if you're the televoters and you're voting and then you see who won and it has nothing to do with what you thought would win, but it's because the jury has voted it through, there could also be the element that maybe your favorite song fucked it up the night before. But you have no damn clue.
San Marino did on the jury, in its semi-final jury, and then massively improved on the night. And El Haida Dani having a costume change in between. I mean, we've voted differently on different things that we've seen.
Yeah, it's really, because, you see the odds shrinking after the jury final, and that does impact how people vote, and it's really not fair. They obviously have the jury final the night before because they need a backup in case their satellite messes up during the live broadcast, but they could just record a dress rehearsal instead, rather than doing a jury vote. I totally agree. We need to have the jury and the televoters voting on the same performances. Mm-hmm. Now, Porig, we're going to have to, wrap this up because we're approaching 20 minutes, but let's go around and say what system we advocate and any closing thoughts we have, starting with Ireland.
I'd advocate a return to the pre-2012 with an increased panel of jurors. And then just one observation on this year. People are saying, oh, everybody voted for Il Volo. The Volo should have won. But all these people who voted for Il Volo then went and bought Måns' song. And he's charted everywhere in top 10s and top 20s all over Europe and in Australia. And Il Volo are nowhere to be seen. So that's just another point.
Vabubu.
I would be fine with the same thing that Porg just mentioned. The only difference, I think, being that ensuring that it's on the same night that people are voting. My only thing, honestly, in my ideal system, the jury would just go. Because I think it's too complicated. It is too complicated to explain the damn system to the televoters. And we are not stupid. We deserve to be, having a right to our votes. So honestly, needs to go.
But, we talked about juries being manipulated quite a bit. Televoting does get manipulated as well, and telephones do malfunction, and people vote repeatedly. Even with a 50% accounting for the score, even that still happens. That said, I'm with Porrick on the sense that I think the jury does need a reform. I would strongly suggest a panel of about 25 people, so they can't be easily manipulated. And for goodness sake, they need to be music experts. And if a country cannot fill the quota of music experts or entertainment industry gurus, borrow from other countries, as the contest does. So Eurovision, you don't have to be from Kitty Bracknell. Edouard is Ukrainian. He represented Moldova. So it doesn't matter if Moldova or Belarus by expert opinion from other countries.
Now, if we rewind, there were the dark ages of televoting. Maria in Latvia, what was that? Estonia. Throughout the noughties, there were some strange results in the first half. But you know what? Those days are gone. If you look in recent history, the televote has predicted the winner, which has often usually aligned with the jury. So I feel like the public is more attuned to what a good song is now. They're less like these regional rivalries don't matter as much. Lithuania gave 0 points to Russia this year, but their neighbors doesn't matter. Estonia, Latvia, those countries that were winning in the early noughties, now they struggle to do well with the public. So I kind of think we can get over all that and just go ahead.
I think it's psychological in a way to have the juries there. The countries like Belgium and the Netherlands, who during televote were like, nobody's going to vote for us, so we'll just send crap. And then with the jurors, they've decided to send good songs. And the public have actually voted for them. But they've only sent the good songs for the juries, but both have actually appreciated them. So I think psychologically, Western countries at least feel they need the juries in order to send good songs.
Exactly. And you know what? I would really love to see that jury pumped up. I need to see 40 or 50 people. I don't want 5. I don't want 10. Give me 4D. Call Sony Music. And then again, I guess I could vote for their artist. But that's another point. These music professionals, if you look at the list, they're often affiliated with a label. Who do you think they're going to support? Fellow people on their same label. I mean, it's just shade. That's why you need more people. And I would even say reduce the jury to 25%, give the public 75% of the vote, and have the jury there to break the ties, to break.
Devin is not one of the people. Devin is not one of the people.
Well, you know
too
what?
much.
Devin,
the public does not deserve 75%. Absolutely not. The public are not a marker of good taste. I tell you. Entries
they
like
voted for
Norway,
Lorraine, because they voted for Amelie
Estonia,
they voted for Conchita
2015 will
Wurst.
suffer.
And
Norway
Devin,
came 17th with a televote.
Devin, you may be speaking English, but you need subtitles under your picture right now that basically says, "I believe the people are stupid. I believe."
No. I just think no. You need to look at the demographic that watch Eurovision. It's 195 million people. That is spread out. So the grandmothers that watch it in Armenia are not necessarily going to pick up the phone. Sorry, the grandmothers that watch it in Armenia that pick up the phone to vote are not necessarily going to go out and buy the CD when it's released. So you need decent entries to emerge.
But you know what?
Do have commercial value.
But one thing on this, if we want to look at politics, right? We say Eurovision is political. If we want to look at real politics, most people view it as quite antiquated that a country is not fully democratic in its voting process, which means any damn person who is above the years of 18 or whatever it is in the country, regardless of their IQ, regardless of their profession, regardless of their race, regardless of their religion, etc., is allowed to have a vote which counts equally. So why in a system, Eurovision, which is like one of the most, in theory, kind of, bring people together, all different nations, happy la family things, why does it have this system where you have these random ass people who've been picked, whose votes count for so much more, and whose votes even count in a totally different way? That to me makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, that's what we think. What do you think? Let us know here on wiwibloggs or on social media at wiwibloggs, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube. Just type that shit in, you'll find us. See you later.